Hey friends, it's Ashlyn. Today we're going to do something I don't normally do. We are going to spray paint an entire furniture flip. I've brushed and rolled, just our usual suspects, right? But on a full piece like this, spray painting this large tall boy dresser, that may be a task. So today we're going to find out, is spray paint better than hand painting for furniture flipping? Let's go. This maple tallboy dresser is nothing fancy. It's probably very much like something if you were a child raised in the 80s and 90s, like you had growing up. I know that my brothers had a dresser very similar to this as we were coming up. For $30 for a solid wood maple piece, I knew that I had to have this immediately. Now, this dresser is a brick house. This thing is heavy. Even with the drawers out, it took 3 of us to get this out of their house and loaded into my car. Luckily, no one dropped it and no one hurt themselves, which is always a great start. Regardless of the mechanism you're using to paint, preparation is always going to be key. So I pull out all of the drawers and number them so they can go back in their home when they're ready to return and even find a fun little present. Regardless of how clean you are, there's always going to be little dust bunnies behind drawers, underneath the piece, so it's always a good idea just to grab a vacuum and vacuum everything out. Removing the existing hardware is necessary to get a really deep clean. It's also another way that you can really examine the piece and see what repairs, if any, need to be done. I mentioned that this is a solid maple piece and maple is a hardwood. And so I had some concern that the batwing hardware might leave an imprint as well as some discoloration that may be tough to overcome, but I wanted to give it a go anyway. Unfortunately, that is exactly what happened, and the batwing hardware did in fact both discolor it as well as leave an imprint, and had to work on a way to remedy that. Interestingly, not all the drawers maintained that imprint. I'm not sure why. If you have any ideas, let me know down in the comments. But each time I was hopeful that I would pull the hardware off and it would be okay, but unfortunately, more than not, the drawers had that remaining marking. I mixed together some TSP, which is a very abrasive cleaner, and sprayed down the drawers as well as the body to really give it a deep clean that will ultimately help the primer as well as the paint adhere to the piece. Don't forget to rinse the TSP after you've sprayed it on. I feel like I see some furniture flippers forget to add in this step, but that's very important. Also, please wear your PPE. TSP can be rough on your skin or if it gets splashed in your eyes. So wear your glasses, wear your gloves, and protect yourself. The owner of the piece thankfully disclosed that one of the drawers was wonky. And I wanted to call this out because I think this is very important for transparency when you're selling your own pieces as well. If something is wrong with the piece or you couldn't just quite remedy something, please disclose that to the next buyer. It's such a bummer when you show up and something's not as it was advertised, especially if you plan to make a business out of this. People talk, and word of mouth matters. It might matter more than you think it does in the furniture flipping business. It is a small community. So be honest, disclose if things aren't perfect, and it will come back to you in a good way. This is the second or third time that I've used these little corner clamps, or I think they're called right angle clamps, on drawers. And it's been really great. You just put them at a 90-degree angle and then slowly increase the tension, and it holds the drawer in place for holding glue or whatever it is that you're needing it for. So I think I will be using these more in the future just to help stabilize everything overnight while it dries. I've said before that you do not need a fancy sander to do furniture flipping or furniture rehab. The caveat being, if you're working with hardwoods like maple, I cannot even fathom trying to hand sand this wood. So I chose to use a random orbital sander working from 120 to 180 and 220 grit to get a smooth finish. But if you want to hand sand, that's your prerogative. But for me, I didn't want to spend the time, so I did use a sander on this one. I do need to mention that prior to sanding, I did go in with my carbide scraper just to scrape off the first few layers of finish to make it easier for my future self to sand, which is what you're seeing on the drawer closer to the camera. That is prior to sanding and just trying to get through some of those layers of finish. Here's where the drawers were at about 2 hours in. They're not bad, but you can still see the bat wing imprint. And so I pulled out some oxalic acid to try to even up the fronts of the drawers. I've said it once, I'm going to say it again because your safety matters. Oxalic acid is exactly that. It's acid. So put on the appropriate gloves, wear your glasses, and cover your skin. Take my word for it that this is not fun to have it touch your skin. So just protect yourself. I did a total of 3 rounds of oxalic acid, waiting 10 minutes between each coat, and still was not getting the results that I wanted. After rinsing the oxalic acid off, the wood was definitely lighter, so it did do what it was supposed to do. But that bat wing, sunburn, is that what you would call it, was still there. And it would not end up taking stain evenly. So unfortunately, I did have to pivot. But first I'm going to pout about it and go work on the body of the dresser for a little while to cool off. I'm always looking for new or better ways to decrease the amount of time it takes me to flip a furniture piece. And while the sound is absolutely atrocious, this carbide scraper has really helped actually cut down my sanding time because it'll get those first few layers of finish off of a piece so you aren't spending so much time trying to sand through all of that finish. It's also not grinding the finish into the piece. So this has been something that has really been a time saver for me. But like I said, it does make a horrible noise. So if you're sensitive to sounds, this may not be the tool for you, but it does help with cutting down turnover time. I live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and what's been selling well here for many years at this point is two-tone furniture. So some of the furniture is a certain color and then the other is wood-toned. And so what I had decided to do was for the top of this dresser as well as the legs, I wanted to do a dark coffee color and then paint the body black. While I would love one of those surf prep sanders, I don't currently have one, so I did end up hand sanding the legs, but it's such a small surface area that it wasn't a big deal. So I sanded the legs up to 220 just by hand and got them in good condition to receive stain. This dresser came from a family with 4 wonderful kiddos, and so naturally, because that's just life, there were scratches and gouges that needed repaired. So I took some wood putty and a putty knife and just filled in those spots and then sanded them even with the rest of the body of the dresser. I moved to the top of the dresser, and because I was going to be staining this and there was a crack, I took my finger and just some stainable wood filler and pushed it into the crack and smoothed it out even. I moved the Betty outside where we were getting a little bit of sun and blew it off with a leaf blower. And man, that worked awesome. I'm going to remember that for the future. At the time that I primed this dresser, I still wasn't 100% sure if I was going to go really light like a beige or super dark like a black. And so I did choose to prime it with a Ben shellac based primer to seal in any potential bleed through that may occur. I don't know why after all these years it still always startles me when I open up a can of primer and it's separated. So don't panic if you pull the top off the can and the shellac and the primer base have separated. Just mix it back up and you're good to go and move forward with priming the piece. I recently had a subscriber reach out and ask that I show the proper way to prime a furniture piece before moving forward with paint. So I've recently released that video so you can go and get more of a detailed look if that's something you're interested in. But briefly, I take a chip brush that you can just get at the dollar store and get in kind of the nooks and crannies of the piece, and then go in with a roller and just roll everything out so that it's even. And don't forget to do your scratch test to make sure that your primer has properly adhered to the furniture piece. You're going to save yourself a lot of time and energy by doing this scratch test prior to putting on your paint. Then simply go over your piece with a 220 grit or higher piece of sandpaper just to remove any of the lumps or bumps. If you find a little area that's uneven, that's okay. Just go ahead and fill it with your wood putty, sand it down even, and do another little baby coat of primer, and you're good to move forward. While the body dried, I moved back over to the drawers and primed those as well. I do find that the shellac base primer, as opposed to some of the other bases, is a little bit more runny. And so you do need to watch for potential drips. Now, if it does drip, that's not the end of the world. Just sand it off and keep going. But save yourself some time and make sure those edges are nice and crisp and that you don't get any extra drippage. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Does spray paint on furniture actually work? I grabbed this Bare Premium in black matte and was excited to give it a go. And just a quick FYI, make sure that you're getting spray paint from the same lot number because they may have a different consistency with different lots. So just ask me why I know that. The first coat went on pretty much like everything else I've ever spray painted in my life. Just kind of got to get used to the technique a little bit, and once you figure it out, you can move forward. Furniture rehab creates so much trash. And so I'm looking for different ways all the time of ways to create less garbage. And so I had this concept of an idea of 4 drawers that are the same size to take some tinfoil, wrap it around, and then tape it and move the tinfoil from drawer to drawer as opposed to just using more and more product. And it actually worked well. It was a little bit of a time suck to move it from drawer to drawer, but I definitely did create less trash. Here's where things got sticky, literally. So I decided, for whatever reason, to try this spray paint at the peak of pollen season, and pollen got stuck in the paint. So I did sand it down after the second coat just to smooth everything out and see if that helped. And it really, really did. So good news there. Maybe sand between coats, and that'll help you get a smoother finish as well as clean out apparently any pollen or muck or bugs that might get in the paint between coats. While the drawers dried, I moved back over to the body and started spraying there. And I feel like with this particular paint, as well as the structure of the dresser, more brisk short strokes worked better for coverage and for time. So if you've tried this Bare Premium paint, let me know if that was your experience as well. I should have protected my hands the way that I protected this dresser, but it is pretty satisfying to watch this tape removal. I did miss taping just a couple spots, so just sanded those off, no big deal. And then for some of the tighter areas, I just took a box cutter and scraped off the primer, and everything was good to move forward. Maple has a very high blotch rate, which means that it's going to take the stain potentially unevenly. So I was very diligent about the oil-based pre-stain that I was using and trying to get that in every single spot, letting it thoroughly dry before wiping off any excess to try to avoid any blotchiness as much as possible. And finally, it was time to stain, and I was so excited because sometimes I struggle with seeing the full vision until I can literally see it in front of me. So to see the black and this coffee stain color come together was so rewarding. You're all done with staining. You can just throw everything in the trash and call it a day, right? Wrong. Oil-based products are very, very flammable and can even combust. So before you throw everything away, I recommend put everything in a pot that has a lid, soak it with water, seal the pot, and put it away from your home so that your home and your family are safe. I knew that the 11 handles that this dresser needed was going to be spendy, but I didn't realize it was going to be $50 spendy. So what I did was I kind of just creeped on some Amazon sales and waited for a couple things to come up, and then found these beautiful poles, and I just love them. They have such a nice little touch of elegance and go so well with the black. I think it actually worked out great. Okay, here's the part of the video where I remind you where we started. This is the maple tallboy dresser that was straight out of the 80s, and here it is today. The Black Bear Premium paint is giving more of a lime wash look as opposed to a classic matte, but I do really like it. I think I would try the premium paint again, but maybe in a different finish. Because I did need to go back and do that third coat because of the pollen, I did use about 3 cans for this entire piece, minus the top, the sides, and the feet. What's my verdict? I think it's going to be weather dependent for me. If it's sunny and nice, I would spray paint again. But if it's winter and dreary, I'm going to stick with my roller and paintbrush. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. See you next time.